Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. Welcome to day 644. Joe Biden warned Russia against using nuclear or radioactive weapons in Ukraine after Moscow made unfounded accusations that Kiev was planning to use a dirty bomb on its own soil and blame Russia for it. Diplomats from the United States, France, and Britain called the claim transparently false in a rare joint statement, suggesting that the Kremlin could be planning a so-called false flag operation. Biden said, quote, "Let me just say, Russia would be making an incredibly serious mistake were it to use a tactical nuclear weapon," end quote. Ukraine's nuclear energy operator, meanwhile, said Russian forces occupying the nation's largest nuclear power plant were engaged in secret work at a site where spent fuel is stored, which he said suggests, quote, "they are preparing a terrorist act using nuclear materials and radioactive waste stored," end quote. Meanwhile, progressive House Democrats retracted a letter written 4 months ago but released on Monday that urged Biden to directly negotiate with Putin to end the war in Ukraine. Representative Pramila Jayapal claimed that the letter, which called on the Biden administration to seek a realistic framework for a ceasefire and to pursue every diplomatic avenue to support such a solution that is acceptable to the people of Ukraine, was released by staff without vetting. It was originally drafted and signed in June. Congress has committed more than $60 billion in security and humanitarian aid to Ukraine since Russia invaded in February. Moving on, an estimated 4.6 million people in the United States will be ineligible to vote during this year's midterm elections due to prior felony convictions. That's roughly 2% of the voting age population in the country. There are currently 11 states that deny voting rights to people even after they've completed their full sentences, including parole and probation. Further, 1 in 19 African Americans of voting age is disenfranchised, a rate 3.5 times that of non-African Americans. In other news, roughly 5% of all plastic products are recycled in America, and the vast majority end up in landfills, according to a report from Greenpeace. The report estimates that the United States reprocessed about 2.4 million tons of plastic waste in 2021 out of a total of 51 million tons produced, and that no plastic packaging in America meets the threshold to be called recyclable, according to standards set by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation New Plastic Economy Initiative. Plastics must have a recycling rate of 30% to reach that standard. The rate of plastic recycling in the U.S. is also expected to drop even further as the, quote, "industry plans to triple plastic production by 2050, end quote. The report concludes that plastic recycling is a, quote, failed concept, end quote. And finally, more than 80% of the continental United States is experiencing unusually dry conditions or drought, the largest proportion since the NOAA began tracking it 20 years ago. Record low water levels on the Mississippi River are making it difficult to move cargo by barges, while the drought across the Mississippi Basin is allowing salt water to enter from the Gulf of Mexico, which could contaminate drinking water. In the West, the 22-year mega drought is now considered the driest in at least 1,200 years, and a recent study found that 42% of that drought is attributable to human-caused climate change. Last week, the National Weather Service projected another warm and dry winter for California, following the state's 3 driest years on record. And in the polls, the Associated Press says 62% of Americans believe the federal government isn't doing enough to fight climate change. While Congress approved in August the largest investment in climate spending history, 49% of Americans say it won't make much of a difference on climate change, 33% say it will help, and 14% think it will make it worse. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.